all that long. But before we get into specifics with the research paper, CDTs, I read off the names that I had finished yesterday at the end of class. I think it was like 10 or 11 of you, which would be about, that means that there's 10 or 11 of you that would still need to finish. I'm asking that you finish those CDTs by Thursday night. So you can do them through your iPad, and then, if you need to borrow an iPad from the library during a study hall or something, we know some of them we can end up working with. Laptops, the CDTs do not work on the laptops. They're not updated on there. If you finished your CDT yesterday in Power School, you already have a grade in for it. With your CDTs, your CDT that you're taking this time around is worth 20 points. Most, if not all, of you have more than 20 points showing up in Power School. What happens is your CDT score is made up of 5 different categories. So there is like interpreting literature for fiction and nonfiction. There's analyzing structure for fiction and nonfiction, and then there's an overall vocabulary. If on your CDT, so the one that you took, this week, if in any of those categories you improved 1 point to 100 points, you earned yourself 1 bonus point. If you had an improvement in any of those 5 categories of 100 points and beyond, then you earned yourself 2 bonus points. If your overall score, so your total score, when it was all said and done, if your total score improved by more than 200 points or more, you earned yourself another bonus point. So with there being 5 categories, if you improved by over 100 points in all 5 categories, 10 bonus points. And if your overall score improved by 200 points, another bonus point. So you could get a 31 out of 20, which some people did. If you go down in any of those categories, so in a category you went from 1 point, down 100 points, you would lose a point. And then if you went down any more than 100 points, you would lose 2 points. So some of you have points that you are picking up, and maybe I pick up 2 points here, maybe I lost a point here, so you could end up having like a 23 out of 20 or a 24 out of 20, something along those lines. Every single person who has finished, so I don't know about those of you who aren't done yet, every single person who has finished has gained points overall. It doesn't mean you gain 200 points or more, but everyone who has taken it has gained points, and everyone who has taken it, who has completed at this point, has passed. So the chances of you accumulating bonus points would be a very positive, good thing. So if you have not finished it yet, please by Thursday night submit. There's a decent chance that it could end up being a 22 out of 20, a 23 out of 20. Maybe everything aligns and you get a 31 out of 20. But we have some sections where people are gaining 300 points. I don't think that means that your IQs have just astronomically gone up through the roof. I don't think it means a Teacher of the Year award. I think it means you didn't really try all that hard the first time for some of us. And now maybe a little bit more effort went through the second time. System is the system. Kind of like how you're abusing on their own heads.
Actually, that's study guide.
So, any questions about CDTs? All right.
Did you say caramel or caramel?
Pardon?
Did you say caramel or caramel?
I say caramel.
Yeah. Dang it!
Do you say syrup or syrup?
Syrup.
I say syrup. All right. On this page, make sure you have something to write with, pencil or pen. Topic selection. You are going to select your topic tomorrow. You are going to do your brainstorming by Thursday. And I'll show you what that involves. Topic selection, so you're going to choose a topic by tomorrow. Not by tomorrow, you're really going to choose it tomorrow. And then Thursday, you're going to do brainstorming. Brainstorming is basically you trying to come up with parts of an argument. Your preliminary bibliography, which we'll go over all this stuff here in some detail. Your preliminary bibliography, we're going to do through NoodleBib. Starting next week on Monday, we're going to go down to the library. You're going to have a preliminary bibliography done by Wednesday, March the 6th. So that is next week. All right? So shh. So, what now? The hope is, assuming we're able to go things at the pace that we want, we're going to set up our preliminary bibliography by Friday of this week, so that when we go down into the library, we can start running through the databases. Mrs. Miller's probably going to be going over the databases with you. Main reason for doing that, she can explain what's going on. That gives me the opportunity to walk around the room and kind of help people locate stuff with what's happening. Most of us are going to know exactly where we need to start with the research. Preliminary bibliography is not going to be anything involved with all the sources that you're going to use. It's you just coming up with potential things. Your brainstorming, which this is going to be a Google Doc, a Google form that you're going to submit through Google Classroom, your brainstorming is going to be worth 10 points. You having a preliminary bibliography set up is going to be worth 10 points. Then we're going to be completing research in the library from Friday, March the 8th through Friday, March the 15th, where you're going to be creating 50 note cards. On a note card is going to be one fact per note card. So if you have, let's say, 10 sources, and you find 5 pieces of information from each one of those 10 sources, that ends up being 50 note cards.
Nice. Is there
Half a point, right?
a requirement on how many sources we have to use?
When your paper is all ready to go, everyone is going to be using Fahrenheit 451. Probably only for 1 or 2 little facts. You're not writing a Fahrenheit 451 essay, okay? We're going to incorporate it because we have topics that go along with it. Besides Fahrenheit, you're going to use 5 other sources. Most of those sources are going to be coming from a database. You can use an outside website. The reason going from the database has nothing to do with trying to keep you off of Wikipedia or anything like that. But coming from the databases, we know that they are viable sources, we know that they're valid sources, and we know they also match up with what your topics are going to be. Honestly, what people end up finding to be a pretty good source for them are print sources, or book sources beyond Fahrenheit 451, because you find a lot of facts and a lot of information. It's easy to come up with 50 pieces of facts, 50 pieces of information to go on your note cards. The tricky part is making sure that they are relevant pieces of information that you're taking your note cards from. But you're going to have 6 sources total. One of those sources is going to be Fahrenheit 450.
So with those, do we have to actually use something from every source into the essay?
When we do your preliminary bibliography, we want to have at least 10 sources. You are by no means going to have to use all of those 10 sources into the essay, but you will have to use at least 6 sources, with one of those things being Fahrenheit. So it's really going to be you probably locating 5 more sources. If you find 7 sources that you want to use plus Fahrenheit, I'm perfectly fine with that. But everyone would have a total of at least 6 sources. For each note card that you do, shows up as 50 points. When you do your first draft, because we're going to have 6 paragraphs at 5 points a paragraph, your first draft is going to be worth 30 points. And then when you submit your final essay, that's going to be 150 points. So when you add all the stuff together, 150 plus 50, 200, 230, 240, 250.
Dude, this is sick. I can actually get my grade up. I'm like, where does it go? Oh my god, I'm over here like, let's go.
Now, no offense to you, it's also a way to sabotage your grade.
Yeah, that's
You know, if you choose not to do hold the note cards and things like that, it can really put you behind the 8 ball. Not saying that that's what you're going to do. And honestly, after the notebook check, you know, those of us that are kind of on iffy ground, we've kind of stabilized a little bit, and the CDTs are certainly helping with that as well. But yeah, this should really kind of, you know, help solidify some grades. The thing that hurts people the most, honestly, is probably, and sometimes you can't help it, would be if there's an extended absence where you miss 3 days of taking note cards. Well, then you're responsible for taking care of it at home. In previous years down in the library has had sets of laptops that you can use. So if you went down in 9th grade and did like research paper, any kind of typing in the library, they had computers down there. They do not have the computers this year. So it is paramount that you bring your iPads with you, because that's really where our online research and all that kind of stuff is going to be coming from. They don't have the thing as laptops for us to pull from. So Make sure you keep bringing iPads with you. As we do stuff with Google Docs or a Google Form for this week, have your iPads with you just so we can kind of get in that habit.
For the first draft, you're gonna like look over it and proofread.
For the first draft, it'll be similar to how we did Metamorphosis and Oedipus Rex, where you'll have a Google Doc that you'll be working through paragraph at a time. It is not going to be quite as structured because you are all going to be doing different topics. There's not going to be a one-size-fits-all so far as sentence structure and all that stuff. But I'll still be taking a look at what you have paragraph by paragraph. So yeah, I'll still be looking at it. Okay. With us doing note cards through the 15th, it would take us roughly about a week to put together our rough draft. So, now you're taking a look at approximately the 22nd. Don't put a due date of the 22nd for your first draft. Whenever we're done with our first draft, doesn't mean we would be working on it for another week, but I would give you a week to kind of finish things up. So that's where I'm kind of coming up with that March 29th due date. The note cards, those things are going to be due at the end of class on March the 15th. So the due dates that we now know, tomorrow we're going to select topic. By Thursday, end of class, we'll have our brainstorming taken care of. Preliminary bibliography by next Wednesday. This is something that we're going to be working on really Friday through Wednesday of next week. We're going to come back to class next Thursday, go over a couple things with note-taking, and then we're in the library for 6 days, Friday the 8th through Friday the 15th, where you're going to be able to hopefully take care of your 50 note cards. And from there, we'll come back, start working on draft, outline, all that kind of stuff. I would say your essay is going to be a little bit longer than the other ones that we've done, but you're not writing a 10-page research paper or anything along those lines. You're going to be looking at about 6 paragraphs. Normally we do 5, so we're adding about 1 more paragraph to it. Now some of the paragraphs might be a little lengthier, probably in the ballpark of 3.5 to 5 pages would be my guess, where most of us would end up being. And honestly, for Metamorphosis, I think most of us were sitting around 3 full pages. So it's not tripling, quadrupling, anything like that for the writing side. Any initial questions? So, on the back, yeah. What you have on the back is you have topics, and you also have then a research question. Here's the big thing. No one is doubling up on topics. So all of you are going to be doing a different topic. Okay? There are some that kind of overlap. There are 35 options on there. I think there's 21, 22 of us sitting in the room. So, there's ample room for us to select topics. One of the things, and then Nathan, I'll get to here in a second. One of the things between now and tomorrow when we select topics, and I'll explain how we select them, is you want to kind of come up with your checklist of these are the ones that I would be interested in doing, or these are the ones that I don't want anything to deal with. If you want to go into fantasy football mode and make your draft board, and rank them 1 through 35, and you can cross them off as they get done, by all means you can go ahead and do that. I'll explain the selection process here in a second to you. Nate, question?
I was gonna ask you.
Here's what we're going to do, because I want to go over them so that you can understand what we're looking at. I want you to be able to kind of digest what they all are. Tomorrow you're going to pull numbers. The number that you pull is not the topic that you are doing. So if Maddie pulls number 5, that doesn't mean she's doing banned books. If Maddie pulls number 5, that means she has picked number 5. So if you have number 1, you get first pick. Unlucky person who gets number 22 or whatever, you're going to kind of be stuck with the leftovers here. So tomorrow when you come in, we're going to do our little draft selection. We'll know your numbers, and then that's the order in which we'll go about selecting what your topics are. After we pick them, if you decide, Nathan, can I have your topic plus 3 pencils for future considerations, a bag of chips, and topic number 8? If you decide to orchestrate a trade, okay, but you have to let me know because I'm keeping track of who's doing what. Now, in years past, what I've done is I've always listed here are potential topics that that you could do, and I'm just randomly highlighting different ones. What I've done this year, and I'm hoping this makes it easier and less complicated, is with each topic I've also provided a question. So what you're doing, and then Julie, I'll get to you here in a second. What you're doing is you're writing a persuasive paper. You are not writing an informative paper. So a mistake that people would do if they were to take, ADHD is you're not writing what is ADHD and symptoms of it and whatnot. You are taking a position about it. So I have introduced a potential question. You might change it, but are children being over-medicated for ADHD and similar disorders? So if you were taking this topic, your research paper is essentially going to answer this question. Yes, people are being over-medicated. You could go, no, people are being under-medicated. You could do, people are being medicated appropriately. So I've thrown out questions for each topic so that you have a specific thing that you could answer. If you decide that you want to do something dealing with banned books and you have a different question that you want to look at, I have no problem with that so long as you'll approve that with me. But when we do our topic brainstorm, you're going to identify what question you're hoping to answer, and then you're also going to explain what your answer would be. I took all of the topics, and I took the questions from SIRS, which is one of the databases in the school library. All right. So if you were to go to cyberbullying, SIRS already has a question: should schools and lawmakers do more to prevent cyberbullying? They have viewpoints saying yes. They have viewpoints saying no. They have timelines. They have an overview of it. So you already have some sources that you can immediately start with before you have to start digging into more additional sources. So you have a decent starting point with each one. Well, I'll talk to you after. Or I can stop over talking to you a bunch. Yeah.
Could I be my own source?
No.
Yeah, can I also
Now,
medical records?
what you can do, and it's going to depend upon topics and things like that. Things that people have used for sources is you can certainly do interviews. Now it depends, who you're going to be interviewing. But we've had people where they'll interview other teachers, guidance counselors, or experts in the field that don't go to school. Textbooks can be valid resources that people end up using and whatnot. You might include personal anecdote about yourself. And I have no problem with that, but that's not going to count as one of your sources. But an important thing to keep in mind is, and this is like same conversation I always have with my argumentation class, anytime you're presenting an argument, yes, you can bring in outside sources, and you have to bring in outside sources for this, but you also have your own experiences, you have your own observations about things. So if you're taking a look about cell phones in schools, should cell phones be permitted in schools, and based on things that you have experienced or observed, reasons why yes they should or they shouldn't, I have no problem with you including that. But Nathaniel Brackman is not going to show up on your works cited page. Dr. Brackman or anything along those lines. EDD or PhD or whatever the case may be. So taking a look at these things, are there any topics off the top of your head where you're kind of going, what do you mean by this? Or are there anything with the questions that you take a look at where you're kind of unsure what the question is posing? Take a little bit of time, look over the topics. What are some where you might be a little concerned about what does it mean? What are we talking about here?
Assisted suicide. What is assisted suicide?
Assisted suicide is technically different than euthanasia. Euthanasia is described as being like a mercy killing. So if I am a doctor and my patient I don't think is going to survive, and they seem to be in a great deal of pain, I could up morphine, which could end up being too much and could cause the body to shut down. That is illegal. You cannot do that as a doctor. Hippocratic oath, that you will preserve life. So euthanasia. So pets are euthanized sometimes. So it's a mercy killing. assisted suicide and it really became a big discussion. I'd say back in the early 90s, there was a doctor, his name was Dr. Jack Kevorkian. His moniker was Dr. Death, where he would take terminally ill patients who had decided that they did not want to live any longer, and he would hook them up to, I think it was like a carbon monoxide machine, essentially, and he would they would die. So he assisted them in a suicide. There are varying states that have different statutes as to if you can and cannot do this. And what they all are, I don't remember off the top of my head. Oregon, I want to say, is a little bit more liberal with it than others. But essentially, it would be people who terminally ill, there's no chance of recovery. If it's too painful to live or they don't have the desire to, assisted suicide. The connection that would kind of take place with this with Fahrenheit 451, would be, well, not that Millie does an assisted suicide, but the overdose with pills, reasons why people might kind of go through with it and whatnot.
You also have to have psychiatrists.
Right.
You have to be evaluated.
And so-
They can actually do it.
And so it would be, do you understand like the gravity of the situation that you're saying, what you want to happen? Age plays a part into it too, of being like 18 and older and things like that. Whereas if you're a young patient, dealing with something, you would hope that maybe more treatments would be able to kind of come up. But yeah, there's a lot of stipulations that you have to go through with it. Internationally, some other countries are much more liberal with it as well, where you allow it to happen. Folks who tend to be against assisted suicide refer to it as assisted suicide because suicide has a negative connotation with it. Others will call it, death with dignity because you're kind of in control of it. Obviously, people's religious views can also play a part into it because if you're determining the life or death of another person, people argue that you're kind of playing God with it. So if you were to end up doing, number 5, you would be arguing this is why I think it should be legalized or this is why I think it should not be legalized. I do not care as to the answer that you take with any of the questions. So it's not me going, I think you should agree to this or I think you should disagree. You totally make the call with it. If you say end up doing number 5, if you wanted to tweak the argument to assisted suicide should never be allowed for anyone under the age of 18 or something, we can change those research questions. But the problem that people have in the past with research is the topic is so broad, I don't know where to begin. By having a specific research question, the hope is it can kind of narrow down the focus a little bit more so that you don't get yourself stuck or caught with it. Number 17. Filtering software would be software that essentially limits what you can access. So it could be something as simple as a firewall, at North Hills, where you try to go to a website, no, you can't go there, social networking or whatnot, or no, you cannot go there because of it has this word showing up in it. Honestly, if one of us ends up doing assisted suicide, it wouldn't shock me if we end up having some firewall issues because of the word suicide showing up in the website. But you also you could have parental guidelines at home with filtering software, whether it be a setting that's just on your phone, that can block explicit content from music lyrics or movies, shows on Netflix and things like that. And there's also countries that use filtering software. So websites that you have access to in the United States, there are certainly some websites that you would not have access to in other countries. China and North Korea are usually the ones that are in the news most often with it. So some people feel that there should be filtering software because maybe information out there is not reliable. You should not have filtering software because it limits freedom of press, freedom of speech, all of those kinds of things. But it would be any kind of software that would limit access to information. And again, that would be one where you could argue, filtering software is definitely appropriate in an educational setting, but it's not appropriate, for governments to do something like that.
Like different numbers. Really?
No, we're gonna do
Which one time is
It's today.
we should do it today.
I also think
think
we should.
Number 21, you could abolish homework.
Hey,
How does that relate
I
to
don't
the
think
book?
I can weigh it.
How does it relate to the book? Clarice's, like the whole education aspect that Clarice talks about where school is different, they don't specifically get into homework, and it would probably depend upon whether you go it should be abolished or it should not be abolished, so far as to what examples that you would use. But when we do our brainstorming, and you have to choose what would be scenes or what would be examples that I could connect to the book, you could simply put Clarice's description of school at this point, and that would give you some things to work with. You're not going to be putting down specific page numbers or specific quotes at this point. That's not going to be until later on. I think most of the characters that you'd probably be focusing on, no surprise, are probably the four main characters. Things that Guy says or does, things that Clarice says or does, Millie, and then probably Beatty as well, just because he kind of tends to be the whole government side. But when it comes to things like nuclear weapons, should disarmament be the main focus of U.S. nuclear policy? You know, at the end of the book, certainly we have a little bit of a nuclear war taking place. Global community does have a responsibility to intervene in states committing genocide with the war that's taking place in the backdrop. Those would be connections that you would be able to make. But you are not going to be having Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit's only going to be a small portion of the essay. And where you incorporate Fahrenheit is going to vary from person to person.
How does the music lyrics relate to the book?
Well, with books being eliminated, it's getting rid of ideas. It's basically censorship. So it's just a specific type of censorship that you'd be looking at. So I would say when Beatty has his conversation with Guy, at the end of part one, when Guy doesn't show up for work, that's probably where this would come in. But just the whole idea of limiting, like kind of like the filtering software, limiting access or limiting ideas, content to certain things. All right, lined piece of paper. Up at the top, Fahrenheit 451 essay structure.
That's how it was. I don't know that I'm big if it really hurts you.
Yeah, just stand up. Honestly, I would just keep it like in your front pocket because you're going to be coming back to it tomorrow. You know.
I am the one that
See, the thing is, I don't care at all. I just want to get I don't really care. I have a couple ones. I actually have one that I'd so take that yeah, I did
Your essay ultimately is going to have 6 paragraphs.
What did the title is?
Fahrenheit 451 essay structure.
Can I go to the bathroom,
This is like the most important thing.
please?
wow.
Make sure you take it.
Wait, 6 bombs?
6 paragraphs total. So, which would mean if we have 6 paragraphs total, how many body paragraphs? 4 body paragraphs. So we know right off the top our first paragraph is going to be an introduction. In the introduction, you are going to essentially state your viewpoint. Hopefully the rest of the letters match up eventually.
Stall.
I'm going to write Stalin. I'm going like
Stalin.
communist Russia here. Actually, I'm just Stalin. Yeah. So introduction, you're going to be stating your viewpoint. What's your last paragraph going to be? Last one's going to be conclusion. All right. So the question kind of becomes, what's going on in the body paragraphs? So for paragraphs number 2, 3, 4, 5, I'll just write them over here since that's not working for us. Your first body paragraph is essentially going to be the overall significance of the topic.